What we're doing in this video is taking a look at some different file formats which are used on the internet. And the first format which we're going to look at is an image format known as JPEG. And so if we take a look inside some graphics editing software, and what we can see here, this is Photoshop. And what I've got at the top, this is the original image, which is 1.37 meg. And underneath is the JPEG image, which is 45K. And we're using the worst quality so that we can see what's happening. And not only are we compressing the file in JPEG, but we're using something which is known as a lossy compression. So some of the information will get lost as we compress it. And so if we look at the original first, let's just zoom in on it. If we look at the text in the original, let's not go quite that close. So if we look at the text of the original here, we notice all around it is white. The whole lot is white except for where the words are. However, if we go down here, and you might only just be able to see it, we see there's all these tiny little dots appearing just around where the text is. And this is where the compression, the technique of how it compresses, is causing what are known as digital artifacts to appear, so bits which shouldn't be there. And this is because it's a lossy, so it loses information, so it's a lossy compression technique. What we can see, and normally JPEG works badly with text because we get this sort of artifacts around here, and even if I change the quality up to 50 here, so reasonable quality JPEG, we can still just about see in here tiny little digital artifacts around here, tiny little dots. If we go to an image though, the way that the technique works that JPEG uses means that smooth gradients, so going from a light blue sky to a dark blue sky, tend to be done quite well, and we don't really notice any digital artifacts in here. However, you will notice, and if we just go in a bit closer, what you will notice is digital artifacts around edges, just like you do with the text. So we can see just around the edges here of the trees, there's also these little digital artifacts starting to appear. And if I turn that quality down, then we'll really see, and here it's actually gone blocky, so it's not possible to see those artifacts again. But there, we can now see just around all the edges, they're going wrong because of the way that JPEG works. Now, normally when you're on 100% quality, the best quality JPEG provides, there's no difference in the image quality, and so that will be fine. JPEG, though, is mainly used for, and let's go and look at this table. So JPEG is mainly used for photos. And so if you want to compress photos, a decent compression to use and file format to use is JPEG. What it stands for is the Joint Photographic Experts Group. So that's where JPEG comes from. And it uses one or two extensions, either JPG or it will use JPEG. And remember, the compression which it's doing is a lossy compression. You will lose some quality when you make a JPEG file, but with photos it's very difficult to see it. With text as an image, it's very easy to see around the edges with that loss of quality. The next format we're going to take a look at is GIF. And let's just change this and have a look at GIF. This is a slightly older compression technique, comes back from the 80s. And what GIF does is it takes your original image and it uses just 256 colors. Now, it can change which colors it picks, but the maximum number of colors it can choose are 256. It could use a lot less, so let's put it down to 32 so that we see what's going on really clearly. So as it compresses my original photo, with a GIF, because it's only got a limited choice of colours, it's not got 16 million, we can see that this blue, it can't have a nice fade of blue, and it has to have it in bands of blue that are closest to the colour. Even if I switch that to 256, we'll still see that slight banding. So GIF is not really a very good format for photos. It is, though, a format which provides you with two things which JPEG doesn't. And we'll just take a look at what they are now. So GIF, first of all, stands for the Graphics Interchange Format. And the extension which you have is GIF. Now, GIF files, graphics interchange format files, are a lossless compression. Now this is really weird. I just want to discuss this a bit, because if we look at that image which we had, let's just go back to the image. If we look here, how can we call this a lossless image format when it's worse than what we really got out from JPEG? The reason is, when we talk about lossy and lossless, that's what the compression is doing to the file. So is the compression coming out with worse information that we're saving as a compressed file compared to the original. Now, in this case, I've told it I only want to use 256 colors, and I only want this number of pixels. Therefore, this isn't losing information because of the compression, it's losing it because I've told it I want 256 colors. This file here, though, the compressed file, is exactly the same as the original which I started with if the original had had 256 colors. Whereas if I just go back to the JPEG, here I've said I want 16 million colors like the original, but especially if I turn down the quality, we can see it's losing information. And this loss of information here is not because I told it to use less colors, it's not because I told it to use less pixels, it's got all the pixels here, but the image format itself has lost quality. And so it's a lossy format. Slightly confusing, I know. Let's go back to GIF again. So the GIF format, why do we use GIF then over photos? Because often photos are better. GIF doesn't have around the text, and let's just have a look at this. It doesn't have around the text any loss of the information. So if we look here, as I zoom into the text, so if I go for the GIF format, around the text edges, I don't see any artifacts in the original, and I don't see any around here. And this is very much saying, the way GIF works is it's saying this is white, and how many times it's white. So I'm not getting all those little bits of information, those digital artifacts, and that's because it's a lossless format. So we use it for when we have images that want to store text. And so that might be documents. If we scan in a document which is black and white, then we'll use GIF for that. It also provides us with very simple animation, and that's why it was used in the early days of the web before Flash animation or HTML5. And it also gives us transparency. So with transparency, what that means is that I can make certain pixels transparent, for instance, where the background is, and then I'll be able to see whatever the image is underneath. So if I put it onto a web page, if I've got a background color on the web page, I make my image background transparent, and then that background from the web page will show through. So there's three reasons that we might want to use GIF, although it is a slightly older format. PNG, which stands for Portable Network Graphics. And Portable Network Graphics, the PNG format, was really made to replace GIF. So it does a lot of what GIF does, and it does it better. It loses the animation. That was no longer required because Flash had come in at the time. And Portable Network Graphics, the extension is PNG. And again, it's a lossless format, so it's very similar to GIF. The massive bonus on PNG, though, was that it allowed you to have 16 million colors. So it allowed you to have, a high quality color image. So 24 bits per pixel and a full alpha transparency layer. So another 8 bits to say whether a pixel is transparent or not. So much higher quality images here. So if we see here, compared to before, the sky is now perfect. There's nothing wrong like we had in GIF. And we also have full transparency, whereas with a GIF it's either on or it's off. With a PNG, you can say it's 50% off, so I want 50% of the background to show through. And we notice there's no digital artifacts whatsoever around the text here. So that's the PNG format, which is a lossless format. So again, you can use this for text images. It doesn't have the animation. It's great for transparency and more colors than GIF. And there's nothing really wrong with using it for photos. It compresses better than GIF does, and it's comparable with JPEG. It generally compresses better than GIF. MPEG is MPEG on its own stands for the Motion Picture Electronics Group. And the file formats, there are a number of different file formats for MPEG. MPEG 1 stands for Motion Picture Electronics Group, and then that's the first version which they did. And that will have the extensions of MPG, or MPEG, MPEG, or M1V, or MP1. And this again is a lossy compression. It works in a very similar way to JPEG, except not only is it looking at the image as one frame, but it's then looking at how the images compare with each other as time goes on. But it's lossy though. You will see digital artifacts. You may have even seen them in a film in a black area where you'll see little blocks of black. That's some of the effects of the MPEG compression. MPEG 1 was for video CDs, and then MPEG 2, which again is Motion Picture Electronics Group, which has almost all of the same extensions, except instead of M1V, it's got M2V, and instead of MP1, it's MP2. But it can also be MPEG or MPG as the file extensions. This again is a lossy file format, and it's used for DVD videos. So on your DVD video will be an MPEG 2 file, and you can also download MPEG 2s off the web. MP3 is interesting because the MP part, it comes from MPEG, so Motion Picture Electronics Group, but what it actually means is MPEG, and then the 3 comes from layer 3, and so layer 3 of this format was the audio layer. So it's not MPEG 1, MPEG 2, MPEG 3. This means MP3 means MPEG layer 3. And the file format extension is MP3. Again, this is a lossy file format for audio. And so MP3 players, your computer, when it compresses files, will use MP3. And there's some newer formats now like AAC which improve on it. And the final one, which is a very popular format on the web, mainly because it compresses files down fairly small, and also the viewer was free at the time when word processors weren't free to even get the viewer. So PDF, portable document format, and the file extension is PDF. Whether it's a lossy or lossless compression, it doesn't really apply here. So if it's text, then it won't lose anything on the compression, but obviously it can contain images which can be JPEG. So this is a document format. We're not really talking about lossy or lossless for this. And we use this for sharing documents. And those documents will contain text, they'll contain graphics, and it's just a useful way of sharing documents. These are documents which in general can't really be edited. PDF format, although it looks like something like a word processor, it's actually very much closer to a graphics format, and so that's why you can't edit PDFs, or you have to use some specialist software to do that.